hammer or a roaring lion. This is our opening for sort of Gestingthorpe Films 2023. Of the 19 films that we are reenacting, Alec Guinness is in 6 of them, Richard Attenborough 3, Peter Sellers in 2, and 4 of them were directed by David Lean. Yeah, no, the quicker of the answer. Yeah. And all of them are in Chris's special British film list of the top 100 films, with one exception: Lady Chatterley's Lover. Come on! Eileen, stand up. You deserve a round of applause for braving the elements. Braving the elements. For braving the elements with hardly very much to keep you warm. So we have Lady Chatterley's Lover here as Mellors, the gamekeeper. Now, just stand up. We have a little tradition where you stand up. Well done. And what perhaps is not so well known is that, and we're just about to come to you, Mr. Hugenhoff, so you can stand up as well. What is not so well known is that D.H. Lawrence, towards the end of his life, wrote an alternative ending to Lady Chatterley's Lover, and it's left in the balance in the book, but in the other version he wrote, and it was only discovered some years ago, he has Lady Chatterley escape from the north of England, the coal mines, to a rural village in southern England. It's coincidence that the rural village she goes to has a church with a red brick tower and a double hammer beam roof. And the village she lived in was owned or predominated over by a wealthy widow whose son coincidentally had been to the Antarctic. So Lady Chatterley didn't live too close to the widow. She decided to live some distance away up the hill. And it was there, in D.H. Lawrence's revised Gestingthorpe versions, that farm worker Hugenhoff
did it have a change of name to Wild Oats? Wild Oats.
However, Hugenhoff pays his respects to Lady Chatterley.
Where is Lady Chatterley?
Here.
Oh, no. Okay, well, with me. Ooh-ar. Ooh-ar. Look at me. Ain't I suffered handsome? I could make you happy. Know what I mean?
Well, don't sit down. Because while Hugenhoff is paying his respects to Lady Chatterley, Mellors is on the train down from Yorkshire to Sudbury. Undaunted by this thought, Hugenhoff carries on paying his respects.
Look at my muscles.
Well, look at them.
Oh, because I haven't. No, I got a proper farm worker's muscles. Slab muscle, I calls it. Not muscles like some goddamn gamekeeper. You tusser. You and I, not you, Organ, could be very friendly.
Hugenhoff is paying his respects to Lady Chatterley. Unknown to him, by this time Mellors has reached Sudbury railway station and is on his bicycle and is pedalling up Ballington Hill as Hugenhoff pays even further, more passionate respects.
I could chop your wood for you, madam. You haven't seen that blue sun, but chain cross-cut sore. Dig your garden, I could. You'd have the handsomest man for several inches around. What do you say to that, darling?
Before she can answer,
He sits down.
Mellors is busy pedalling his way up Ballington Hill. He's got to Bulmer Crossroads, and if you want to know what happens next, come back, same place, same time next year. Brings us to the first entry in our 100 British favourite films. We're working from the bottom upwards, so it's number 94, The Bells of St Trinian's, where we have Alistair Sim, stand up, Alistair Sim, together with the disguised police lady, and this is Millicent Flitton, and you are Ruby Gates, police lady in disguise. We have police lady. Were you ever in disguise? Perhaps we better.
All the time.
All the time. Yeah.
Not like this.
Now,
No.
we have the rather odd experience of Mr. Moulton being dressed as a lady, and again there was an extraordinary situation that happened when they were filming The Bells of St Trinian's, and over here Mr. Harmon likes to stand up. He's going to tell us what happened next as the filming of St Trinian's was going on.
My goodness, what a beautiful actress you are. How well you play, Miss Flitton. I'd like to get to know you better.
Well, I'm not quite what I seem.
I bet you look stunning in a low-cut dress. What a lovely complexion you've got. We could play tennis together or go to the cinema.
I think I need to try to explain something to you.
There's no need, no need. Beauty like yours always triumphs. It is its own prerogative. I could imagine you as Miss World. Would you like to come to the dance with me? You're so attractive.
Absolutely not.
Right, thank you, Chris. So that's entry number 94, and the story is just this wonderful rampage of happy, nonsensical humour, and eventually Miss Flitton's manages to put her money on the horse that wins, and she is saved from bankruptcy. You look like you need some more perfume or mascara. Right, moving up from number 94, we go through In Which We Serve, Hope and Glory, A Hard Day's Night, Genevieve, Educating Rita, until we get to number 81, Clockwork Orange.
Hey!
Stand up, because
That's brilliant.
yeah, absolutely. What a huge, fantastic effort to be Clockwork Orange. Is it a favourite film of yours? Or
No.
No. Is it a favourite film of anybody's? No. Right down the bottom. Right. Colin, tell us why.
The language.
The language.
Yeah, because Anthony Burgess, the original writer, made up this amazing hybrid language of Russian and something else.
So
And it's still in the film. It's brilliant.
you concur.
as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And a really good soundtrack.
Yes, brilliant soundtrack, and reading about it last night, the undercurrent of the story is the dilemma between aversion therapy, which makes you a pure good person, but you're no longer really acting of your own free will. So this, if I understand it correctly, was the kind of intellectual dilemma in the film. Round of applause for the man in the... And the name, which I didn't understand before, Clockwork Orange, because you are now mechanically, psychologically geared up, you work like clockwork. So thank you for opening my eyes to that. Moving on, we have Far From the Maddening Crowd, making an appearance, not deciding who she was until about 25 minutes past 7, is Julie Christie. Stand up, Julie.
Hold on a minute.
Hold on a minute. Right, Far From the Maddening Crowd, Alan Bates, from about 1970 odd, we have Julie Christie breaking the hearts of 3 men until she finally decides that. Do you need a little longer?
That's my hat!
Right, well, while you're finding your hat, we'll move on and.
Hey.
Stage prop.
In Far From the Maddening Crowd, Bathsheba.
No, sorry, I'm Julie Christie.
Yes. Bathsheba Everdeen breaks the hearts of 3 men who are respectively called Farmer Boldwood, Sergeant Troy, and Gabriel Oak.
Ooh.
Doesn't she look like Julie Christie? And you appear in
Geriatric one.
you appear in another of our films a little bit later on.
Do I?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes. So you appear twice.
Ooh.
Right. Moving on, Oliver, the Cruel, or one of the versions of Oliver, the Cruel Sea, Day of the Jackal. We get to number 72. Can you hear me? Goodbye. Yes, that's you.
Yes.
Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Stand up, Colin. This poem of honour and sentimentality and tribute to school teachers the world over. And it's particularly lovely that Colin is wearing the gown and the mortarboard that your father wore in his younger days.
Well, not so younger. He was one of those unfortunate people whose career prospects were cut off by the war. He was due to go to medical college, but had to go into the army instead. When he came out, had to just earn a living, and only years later, I think the late 1970s, he gave up all the jobs he'd done and trained to be a teacher, and as a consequence obtained this and this, of which he was inordinately proud. And I was very glad to find it in the loft when my mother died. He hadn't got rid of it. And it's come in useful tonight, so it's not just goodbye Mr. Chips, but goodbye Mr. Paget.
If any of you don't know the story, it tells the tale of a school teacher. He teaches Latin. He's in the same school for about 48 years. He's not very effective to start with. The boys tease him, but he becomes a bit more strictly disciplined, and then he meets a lady who he falls in love with. She helps him to relax and mellow, and the children come to love him. When he is approaching his 60s, a new head teacher says he should retire. The boys and the governors rebel. He stays in school. He becomes acting head teacher during the First World War, and each Sunday he reads the roll of honour of people who are dying in the First World War, amongst which are children he taught, grandchildren that he taught, and great-grandchildren he taught. How many people in the audience actually have been teachers in their career? We've got Colin, Helen, Mary, Steve, Eileen, Jackie, of course, at the bottom. This is the greatest, loveliest tribute to teachers. Let's give them all a round of applause.
Actually, may I have one detail?
Oh, carry on. Yes.
Any Latin scholars here? Because the line that Robert Donat in the film says very close to the end, having had all the ups and downs, is Haec olim meminisse juvabit.
This once, meminisse, something about will be remembered. And I forgot that, I don't know what my Latin is done.
It's loosely translated apparently as something very close, yes, something like one day we will look back on all this with delight or with fondness.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
And this applies to this as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yes, they would have spoken Latin in the church when this Guildhall was built. It would have been the natural, Latin would have been the natural language
Yes.
of the clergy when
Yes.
this Guildhall was built
Yes.
in the 1450s. So, moving on, we come to our star photographers and greeters at the door, Hamlet and Ophelia. And we have two lots of Hamlets to choose from. Thank you. Do you want to say anything about the skull?
Yorick.
Yorick.
I knew him well.
Well, there are two versions of Hamlet, the 1948 David Lean version and the 1996 Kenneth Branagh version. I don't know if you had a favourite, Graham.
We watched the old black and white.
Wonderful, even better. Laurence Olivier as Hamlet, Felix Almer as Polonius, Gene Simmons as Ophelia, John Laurie, Dad's Army as a man-at-arms, and Stanley Holloway as the gravedigger. And I think we all know the story. This tortured son, father gets murdered, mother marries effectively the murderer, and he is tormented about whether to carry on living or not. And on the sheet that I've circulated round, we've included the most famous lines of all from Hamlet, and I think it might be rather nice if we repeat them all together, because they are so quintessentially the core of this fantastic story. So, to be
or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of courageous fortune, or take arms against the sea of troubles, and by opposing end them.
And Julie Christie down here appeared in the 1996 version of that as well. When you were Queen Gertrude, who married Hamlet's father. Who was Hamlet? Queen Gertrude was Hamlet's mother.
She had married Hamlet's father,
Yeah.
and then she married the father's brother, didn't she?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Anything you want to add to this, Kylie?
Oh, I would love to go swimming but not die. It'd be great.
Right. 68. Penny and Steve Bagby, stand up. Right. They are
The Dam Busters.
from that most quintessential English film, The Dam Busters. This, I take it, is a bouncing bomb.
It's not Steve's.
And this is a little dog whose name is
Nigger.
Sugar. Right.
Oh, well, but yes, I suppose we have to be correct nowadays, don't we?
Which particular members of the air crew are you?
Well, I'm Guy Gibson.
You're Guy
I'm
Gibson.
G for George.
G for George.
Yeah.
P for
Popsy.
Poxy.
P for Popsy. In a moment, the Dam Buster story, we all know, destroying those bombs against all those dams against all odds. And Barnes Wallis, the extraordinary inventor who makes this ton of metal bounce across water, played by Michael Redgrave, your role played by Richard Todd. And the film was released 12 years to the day after the raid took place. So the question to my sister is, which day in 1955 was the film released?
16th of May.
16th of May. This date was emblazoned on our hearts by our late father, who saw the Dam Busters raid as the epitome of English engineering, ingenuity, courage, determination, and understated, never blowing your own trumpet, moral humility and achievement. I wonder if we can give them the theme tune. We all know what it is. Da, 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 da.
Bombs away!
And the film ends very poignantly. Anybody like to remind us how it ends?
Barnes Wallis asked him if he's going to get some rest, and he says he can't. Guy Gibson, because he's got to write the letters to all the missing airmen.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. It's made. It is actually my favourite all-time film. So well done.
But Julie Christie's not in it.
The Northern Australian bit.
Well, there was New Zealanders in it, weren't there, and Canadians. Yeah.
You're not an Australian though.
Yeah.
There was an Australian there.
one of success.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it was.
We'll send this gamekeeper back to Nottingham. And because we're covering war films, I'm not quite sure if it is in the top 100, but it ought to be. Dunkirk, stand up, our survivors from Dunkirk.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got your moustaches on. We have two versions of Dunkirk. There's the 1958 Ealing version produced by Michael Balkan, typically John Mills, Richard Attenborough, and Bernard Lee, who's later in another film we're going to mention, and the 2017 version with Kenneth Branagh. And the more recent version, is that the one you...
I think so, yes.
Yeah, it's the more recent version you want, directed by Christopher Nolan, with Mark Rylance, Harry Styles and Fiona Whitehead. So, I'm just going to turn the heaters on so no one gets cold. Come up over the French coast. Nolan is described as his greatest work, one of the best war films ever made. You see it from the land, they spend a week on the land, the sea, a day of action, and the aeroplanes, an hour of action. And there is something that whenever I think or talk about that flotilla of small boats, the part-time fishermen, the part-time yachtsmen, the full-time fishermen, the part-time sailors, untethering their ships from their coastal ports all around southern England and East Anglia and going across the channel and ferrying the troops back, it never fails to raise a lump in my throat. And I can't be alone in that. And it's lovely that you've come tonight. We've got Dunkirk, almost the darkest point in our nation's hour, and we've got the Dam Busters when the corner was just being turned. So, brilliant. Round of applause. And then we come up to film 66, a 1970 film from the Elstree Studios, The Railway Children. Yeah, stand up, The Railway Children. In The Railway Children, you probably know the story. Family falls into hard times. They go and live in Yorkshire, and while they're there, the children, two boys and a girl, two girls and a boy, do lots of lovely things, including saving a train crash. Please give us a wave if your hankers in your petticoats. Well done. And you're clearly as Peter, and you're either Roberta or Phyllis. Yeah, Roberta, right. And it was written by Elizabeth Nesbit, so round of applause for the Railway Children. And as we progress up to the mid-60s, we go through Passport to Pimlico, Man in the White Suit, The Go-Between, The English Patient, This Sporting Life, that was number 52, Chris, My Beautiful Laundrette, Shakespeare in Love, until we reach Brother Roger and Sister Anne, Comrades Goldsmith in I'm All Right Jack.
Right. I've got a few things written down here. One, the Works Committee has met. They've sent me as their representatives to say we do not and cannot accept the principle that incompetence justifies dismissal. That's victimisation. Okay? And there is another bit where he talks about Russia. This is Fred Kite, the shop steward. And he says, Russia, all them cornfields and ballet in the evening. and there's another bit where, I don't know if people know this movie, but, you know, it's difficult if you don't know the movie. But they send somebody from the Labour Exchange who's not in the union, that's his first fault, and he also demonstrates how he can speed things up to a time and motion studies guy, you know, which is, and the union don't like that. So they send him to Coventry. I don't know if people know what that means. I expect you do. Okay.
I do.
We're not going to speak to you anymore. And I'm going to hand over now to my wife, who supported me up until a certain stage.
I'll just give a little synopsis. The film starts off with an absolute P.G. Wodehouse, Bertie Wooster sort of upper class twit in the nudist colony. He can't get a job anywhere, so eventually strings are pulled and he goes to work in the factory where Roger is, or Mr. Kite, played by Peter Sellers, is shop steward. Upper class twit manages to amazingly do a few things quicker than anybody else, at which point Mr. Kite, Peter Sellers, calls an all-out strike. But eventually Mrs. Kite gets fed up with everybody else being on strike. And what happens?
And she tells him, I'm sick to death of you and your works committee, union this, union that, and your blasted Soviet Union. You're telling me there's a strike on, and I'm telling you it's spread to this house.
So Roger's got his union.
Yeah, I've found some union badges here. It's a union I was in at one time, which is now defunct. And I found a couple of old union cards as well.
Right.
Yeah, because it was necessary if you worked in some places that you had to be a union, you know.
I hope two of them, Roger, in view of what you and Anne are doing, are equity cards, otherwise we're going to be banned.
Well, I never quite got to that, but I did work with somebody who, they called them showmen, and they put the scenery up in the West End and stuff like that. And then occasionally they were called in to Old Spear or something like that, and they did get equity cards.
Did they?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Upper Class Twit was played by a beloved comedian of the late 50s, Ian Carmichael, Peter Sellers, Fred Kite.
Yeah.
Also in the film, Terry Thomas, Richard Attenborough, Dennis Price, and Irene Handel as Mrs. Kite, and we're going to come across her later on as well. John Le Messier, late of Dad's Army, and Terry Scott. And the film ends with Upper Class Twit Ian Carmichael back in a nudist colony. Round of applause for our. And then we have Chris and Jackie. Yes, stand up. Because we have, and Peter and Kim. We have different takes on Oliver. And we have Sykes, the dastardly Sykes here, with his stick, leg, and we have the artful Dodger in Jackie, and don't you look a brilliant artful Dodger, and we have the Harry Seacombe role in Peter Nice as the Beadle who refuses to let Oliver have any more. So, and Kim's, I think you better stay seated, Kim, that's fine, yeah. So we have Peter as the Beadle, Harry Seacombe. I take it it's the more recent one. Which version do you prefer? Because
The 60s.
you prefer the
60s.
Yeah, and because that suits me perfectly, because in the 60s version, music is put to it, and you all have a sheet handed round where the most famous tune, and we're going to sort of sing it. So, have you got some people with good voices? It's the one right at the top. That's that one, Julie. So, food, glorious food, hot sausage and mustard, while we're in the mood, cold jelly and custard, peas, pudding and crumble pie, until we've had a whole meal. Thanks to Amanda, Tanya, and Jill. And have you always wanted to be the Artful Dodger?
Yes. I'll let you have your work back when.
And I can't imagine anybody less like Sykes than Chris.
Thank you.
Do you have a dog with you somewhere?
I do. Paul's eyes around, I can't see him. It's about that long. Oh, there he is. He's up there.
Okay, well, in your version, Oliver Reed plays Bill Sykes, Harry Seacombe is Peter, Mr. Bumble, Jack Wilde is the Artful Dodger, Mark Lester is Oliver, and just trying to think who Nancy was. Yeah, Ron Moody is Fagin. And in the 1948 version, produced again by David Lean, we have Alec Guinness as Fagin and Anthony Newley as the Artful Dodger. So, do we want to sing that song again? Yeah, let's sing that song again, because it's nice. Yeah, we've got in the spirit now.
Food, glorious food, hot sausage and mustard, while we're in the mood, cold jelly and custard, peas, pudding and crumble pie, until we've got whole filled. Thanks to Amanda, Tanya and Jill.
Right, wonderful. So round of applause for Artful Dodger, Bumbleball, and
I've been around your houses while you've been here.
which brings us to film 41 from 1962, the sixth James Bond novel written, but the first film to be produced. What was it? Doctor to Know. Stand up, Doctor No. Are you a particular James Bond?
I do, I love James Bond.
Right. Well, tell us why you particularly love Doctor No. Or
I like them all, really.
you like them all?
Yeah, but there wasn't many in the list, Ashley.
No, there wasn't. There's only two, I think.
Goldfinger and Doctor No.
Yeah. And this was the very first. So, Sean Connery plays James Bond. Ursula Andress as Honey Rider. I always struggle with saying. Sorry.
I didn't want to come as her. People are eating.
Just trying to work out who played. Do you know who played Doctor No?
No.
Right, I should have written that down. Anyway, Doctor No works for Spectre. He's got prosthetic hands because they've been burnt off because of radiation. Eventually, Bond manages to defeat all his attempts to destroy Western culture, and Doctor No falls into a reactor pool. So, as an ex-police lady, is it credible?
Absolutely.
Right. Round of We've reached film number 36, which is the Italian Job. Right, and here we have, as we know, Michael Caine plays the role of Charlie Croker, the kind of criminal. Noel Coward is the arch crook. We've also got Benny Hill, and are you Benny Hill? I'm Benny. Okay, so you are Professor Peach, yeah, and you are Mrs. Peach. Miss Peach. Right, sorry, I beg your pardon. No, it's right. Richard, just tell us what Professor Peach does.
He's the computer guy.
Here's the computer guy that dismantles Turing's traffic control system. Right, so Professor Peach completely destroys Turing's traffic control, huge traffic jams. Michael Caine and friends are able to steal the gold. They put it in 3 Mini Coopers. They drive downstairs, pedestrian streets, rooftops and sewers. They eventually reach the Alps, where they unload the gold onto a coach. And what happens next? The coach goes off the corner of a road, and you see it balanced precariously, not knowing whether it's going to tip down into the valley. And every time Croker, Michael Caine, crawls along the floor of the bus to get the gold, the bus drops further down, and the gold is a little further out of his reach.
A real cliffhanger.
A real cliffhanger, and the film ends with the words. I don't know if we've got anybody here who can do a real good Michael Caine accent. So let's all do it together. Chris,
He said, wait a minute, I've got an idea.
Chris, stand up and do that. And then
I can't talk so much, I can't stand it up.
we're all going to do this because Michael Caine says, as we've just been told by Millicent down there, say it again, Chris.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact word, that's what it is. So it says, wait a minute, I've got an idea.
Let's all say it together. It's actually hang on a minute. Right.
Oh, hang on.
Best Michael Caine voices.
Hang on a minute, I've got an idea.
A good idea, yeah. And the film ends with the bus teetering on the edge. And the extraordinary thing is that the Royal Society of Physicists in 2009, this is completely true, set the challenge to any young physicist, graduate, PhD or whatever, of how they could solve the problem. And the winning entry involved breaking the windows at the back and the glass falls out, so it helps a little less weight. Breaking the windows at the front, but getting the glass to fall in, then letting the tyres down at the front so the back of the bus comes up a bit more, then letting somebody climb out and getting some rocks to put in the front of the bus until eventually the gold slides back to the front of the bus. Applause for introducing the films that we could have chosen but we didn't. 33 Alfie, 31 Zulu, Gregory Girl, Life of Brian, and that brings us in a moment to Dr. Zhivago. Will our various Laras stand up? We have one Lara here, we have another Lara down there, produced by David Lean. And wonderful story. Boris Pasternak, the author, couldn't get it published in Russia. It was banned. He was almost made a criminal for writing it. It's smuggled out to the West, made into a film in 1965, starring
Julie Christie.
starring Julie Christie again, and Julie Christie playing our two Laras here, and Omar Sharif as their love interest. You've got the book there, Jim?
My original.
Your original from 19, well done. It also features Alec Guinness, who crops up in lots of our films, Rod Steiger, Tom Courtney and Ralph Richardson, and Geraldine Chaplin, who was the daughter of Charlie Chaplin, who was Tonya, the...
I could have been her as well.
Yes, well, you can't be both. Tonya was Zhivago's wife, so do you want to be his wife or his mistress?
I think his wife.
Right, that makes life much easier. So Jackie is now the mistress. And Jane has become his wife. So the novel had to be smuggled out, and it is slightly, almost a sort of more modern version of Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, with the love interest, and it sprawls across history, pre-revolution opulence, the corruption that went with it, the revolution and everything it meant, the factions, the fighting between the right Russians, the royalists and the revolutionaries, and eventually Zhivago's disillusionment as Stalinism takes over. And at the very end of the film, an aging Zhivago sees what he thinks is his beloved Lara, about whom he has written so much poetry. He sees her, it's 20, 30 years have passed, it's Stalinistic, cruel, cold, concrete Russia. He tries to get off the bus to catch her, but he has a heart attack before.
She doesn't see him, does she?
She doesn't see him, no.
It's not her, is it?
Well,
Someone that looks like it.
Sorry. Oh, I thought it was.
right, without further ado, a round of applause for our 1949, from the Ealing Studios, our Visitors from Bulmer who have, stand up, Mr. Burbages, who have braved the confusion of coming to our wonderful Guildhall with our cross-dressing actors and actresses, and tell them a bit about Whiskey Galore.
Whiskey Galore,
Oh, yes.
a cargo ship, Hebridean Islands, during the war, cargo ship grounds itself on some rocks, and on the little island there's a Home Guard unit. The captain in charge of the Home Guard unit decides that he's going to protect the cargo of 50,000 bottles of whiskey. He didn't really succeed, but it was a Sunday, and all of the locals, they run out of whiskey because of rationing. Only 4 bottles of whiskey came onto the island every month, and they'd run out of whiskey. It was getting a bit desperate, but it was a Sunday. They couldn't row out on a Sunday because it was a Sabbath. So the clock ticks very slowly up until 12 o'clock. The captain of the Home Guard has mounted a guard to make sure that the people don't steal the whiskey. He's attacked by some locals, tied up willingly, and they protect the whiskey. Customs and excise come, great shenanigans trying to get it back. But you know, some people, you know, even with little babies in their cots, actually have the odd bottle. I can't find it. So. Here we go. Yes, we got a little bottle. This one's for we delivered to Ashley Cooper at Hill Farm.
Oh, thank you very much. Lovely unexpected surprise. The wonderful, sort of lovely 1940 Ealing Studios comedy made in the same year as Passport to Pimlico and Kind Hearts and Coronet. This gentle, amiable, but slightly sort of satirical, very slightly ironic humour. And all the cargo manages to get to the deserving islanders, and ultimately the slightly officious customs official, they play a trick on him. They put some whiskey in some ammunition cases which he's meant to be in charge of, and when he gets to the mainland, the whiskey is found in the ammunition cases, so he's the one that gets sort of punished and found the crime. Can we have a round of applause for and it was a true story. Yeah, in the film it's called I think The SS Politician, but the story had happened a couple of years, well, during the war, 1941, which brings us to film number 18, Henry V. Henry V. Website extraordinaire. Andy, you have 2 different versions. You can be in both of them, or do you have a preferred 1944 version or 1989 version?
For accuracy, I prefer the 1989 version.
Right.
So, Kenneth Branagh.
The Kenneth Branagh version, where Kenneth Branagh produces it, he plays Henry V. I have to say, Andy is a medieval expert and genuinely in recreation and restoration. You also have Paul Schofield, Derek Jacobi, Judi Dench, Robbie Coltrane, Richard Bryars, and a whole host of other famous actors playing with you. When it was produced in 1944, the Laurence Olivier version, it was destined to be, or intended to be, a morale-boosting World War II boost morale epic. Laurence Olivier produced it in glorious Technicolor, and it's interesting that one of the actors, Edmund Knight, who plays Llewellyn, had actually been injured in the raid on the Bismarck. But all of us have got on the sheet some of the most famous lines from Henry V, and when Laurence Olivier did it, the battlefield was sunny. When Kenneth Branagh did it, it was a muddy, much more wet, soggy, genuine battlefield sort of scenario. Anything you want to add to that, Andy, before either you read your lines, or we all read them for you? Read them with you.
If you read a very early blog of mine on the Gestingthorpe website, you will find that there was somebody from Gestingthorpe at the Battle of Agincourt. One of the lords whose part of his estate was Gestingthorpe was present at the Battle of Agincourt.
That makes it even more special, and when we read these lines, it's just one of these stirring Shakespearean, heroic, galvanising his troops, but in the Second World War, galvanising the nation, and in the Kenneth Branagh version, really galvanising all us to make the best of all of our lives. So, can we all join in with once more,
unto the British dear friends once more, or close the wall up with our English dead. In peace there's nothing so becomes a man as modest stillness and humility. But when the blasts of war blows in our ears, then imitate the action of the tiger. Stiffen sinews, summon blood, and disguise their nature with hard, favoured rage.
How many of you did this for O-level? I did. You did, yeah? Yeah. Anybody else do it for O-level? Yeah, Anne did as well. Yes. Film number 17, referred to film number 16, Get Carter. Film number 15 brings us to our spiv of spivs. Pinky Brown, this is your moment. You can't imagine a more amiable person than Ben playing this ruthless, murderous gangster. Ben, why did you choose Pinky Brown, who murders people and treats his wife as if she's just nothing?
Because my wardrobe extended to the spiv aspects, I put those spivvy things together. Is that an honest enough answer?
I was expecting some deeply erudite psychological...
I don't... The vice of sloth, or laziness, idleness, is a vice which actually can help you to be very virtuous, because it prevents you from doing lots of things like murdering people and so on, like Pinky. So I'm very good excuse. I'm much more of an armchair man than Pinky. Yes.
Right, well, Ben, we better give you a round of applause.
Yes.
Which brings us to film number 13, another Ealing comedy, The Lady Killers. If you don't know the story, it starts off with Peter Sellers coming to the door. It starts off, Alec Guinness coming to the door of a delightfully quirky, eccentric, sweet, dear, sort of elderly lady who probably goes to church twice on Sundays, would be a member of the Mothers Union, the WI, and all other good causes. Stand up, Jackie. And it starts off, if you want your hot water to work, just bang.
If the pipe works, I won't really hit it. The pipe will be really good smack, and then the tap works.
Right. She has a squawking parrot, so squawking parrot in hand. It stars Alice Guinness as Professor Marcus, who wears a very long scarf, hence my very long scarf. Peter Sellers, Jack Warner, Katie Johnson, and Frankie Howard as the Barrow Boy. And Katie Johnson is this prim elderly lady, Mrs. Louisa Wilberforce. The criminals hire a room in Mrs. Wilberforce's house. They pretend to be musicians, and they all go there with violins and cellos. One of them, called One Round, has not got a clue what this instrument plays, and they have a gramophone which plays music while they do their plotting. Eventually the bank robbery takes place. They trick Mrs. Wilberforce into getting the money, which comes in a great big trunk, they take it to the upstairs room, they put it in their alleged musical instruments. As they're going downstairs, one round's violin case opens and all the pound notes falls out. Mrs. Wilberforce is horrified, but before anything can happen, 6 or 7 ladies of the Mothers' Union come to a tea party, and they are all busy circulating and chattering around. When Mrs. Wilberforce is able to speak to Alec Guinness and his gang of 5 men, what does she say to them?
I am shocked. Shocked and appalled. It's disgraceful. Simply try for 1 hour, just 1 hour, to be paid like gentlemen.
That better have a round of applause. So the 5 criminals have got the loot. They consider bumping Mrs. Wilberforce off. None of them can bring themselves to it. One by one, they kill each other, apart from Alec Guinness, who smugly thinks that he's got away with the money, and while he is smugly thinking there, standing on a railway siding, the signal from the signal box comes down and clumps him on the top of the head. So he is killed too, at which point Mrs. Wilberforce still has a suitcase full of money, which she takes to the police station, but because she often goes there in a sort of well-intentioned, slightly busybody sort of way, the police simply don't believe, and they say, "Never mind, madam, I would keep it if I was you." And when the film went to America, and the head of Ealing Studios, whatever, was trying to sell it to an American film distributor, he said, "So, what's this film about? The lady killers. Sounds a bit ruthless to me, muggings and knifings. Say, fella, nothing to do with the mafia, is it?" "Oh, no, not at all. It's all just jolly good British fun." "Well, what happens then?" "Well, 6 people got murdered, actually. Strictly good fun." "You Brits call that fun, 6 murders?" "Right, that brings it to Bridge on the River Kwai, 10 train spotting, 9 2 red shoes, 8 Kes, and then 6 kind hearts and coronets." Alec Guinness, again, playing 8 members of the Ascoyne family, who Alice Guinness wants to murder. Helen standing here, he succeeds. You actually have to be 8 people, because you are all the members of the Ascoyne family that Dennis Price has to murder so that he can inherit all the money. And in your various roles, you are Ethelred, Reverend Lord Henry.
That's me.
Right.
Yes.
General Lord Rufus, Admiral Lord Horatio, Lord Ascoyne the banker, Lady Agatha the suffragette, and young Henry the photographer. Eventually, he has murdered every possible claimant to the inheritance, and is writing out his memoirs in the police cell when a message comes through that he is going to be released. Evidence has been found to release him. He joyfully leaves his cell, and having got outside, a journalist says, "Could I read your memoirs, please?" And he realises he's left them all in the cell upstairs, where the police will be able to read them. Thank you, Helen, for letting us That was film number 6. Film number 5, Great Expectations.
Yes.
Standing right at the back with a very Miss Havisham mobile phone. So we have 2 choices for you, Claire. Written, of course, by Charles Dickens. You can play the 1949 version or the 2012 version. In 2012, you're played by Helena Bonham Carter.
I'll go with that one.
We'll talk briefly about both of them. 1949, John Mills plays Pip, Jean Simmons, Estella, Bernard Mills, Joe Gargery, Martilla Hunt, Miss Havisham, and Alec Guinness as Herbert Pocket. I mean, Alec Guinness again and again and again. The 2012 version, Claire, Jeremy Vine, Irvine Pip, Helena Bonham Carter in your role, covered in cobwebs and all your long-worn wedding clothes. Ray Fiennes as Magwitch. Oi, Sykes! You don't want to be Magwitch, do you? Stand up, Gov, and you be Magwitch. Yeah. Magwitch is a rough bit of soft, but he's got a decent bit in his heart. And when he's a young boy, when he's a criminal on the run, he's helped by a chap called Pip. Pip looks a bit like Artful Dodger. Stand up, Pip. So, eventually, Magwitch goes off to Australia. He's sent as a convict, but he makes his fortune, comes back, gives his money to Pip. Pip is in love with Lady Havisham's daughter, Miss Havisham's daughter, Estella, and before he can propose to her, she goes off the rails with a bad bit of stuff, and he goes to see Miss Havisham, and she gets caught in a fire. And if any of you wonder why we've got protective barriers around that infrared heater, and this one here, is because last time we had a Miss Havisham, I genuinely thought she was going to get caught in the fire. So,
I have been told to stay away from the candles, Ashley.
well done. Right. Round of applause to great execution. Film number 4, which nobody chose, Buckham.
39 steps.
39 steps. The Hitchcock version, 1935, is the version in Chris's top 100, and that brings us to another film directed by David Lean, the music by Maurice Jarre. Jarre. Yeah, give the music, Jane, as your husband stands up. Stand up, Lawrence. Can we all do the music? Do, 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 do,
Not very good, actually.
Can you lead us to do it better?
No.
Lawrence is played by Peter O'Toole, and it takes us through the years of the First World War when he goes to Arabia, Transjordan, Palestine, and conjures up a small body of Arabs that increase in number as they basically wage guerrilla warfare on the Turkish Empire. And I think you're amazing, Paul, to come in such a paucity of clothes.
It's freezing here, I can tell you.
And the film is subtle on several levels because Lawrence is a perplexing, enigmatic character. One doesn't know if he's a masochist. One doesn't quite know about his sexuality. He's something of a recluse. After the war, after all his fame, he becomes a humble private in the army, then in the RAF. But as one of his contemporaries said, he had a funny way of always backing into the limelight. So he's a complex, interesting character, and the consequences of Lawrence's liberation of Turkish-controlled Palestine still trickle down to us today with what is happening in Gaza and in Israel. Anything you want to add to the story?
No, I think you've covered it well, actually.
Round of applause for my And that brings us, I mean, you must be all wondering when your turn is going to come. There's only one, there's actually 2 couples. Sorry, we've forgotten.
We're out of the 100.
Yes. Chris, what were you going to be? Bugsy Malone?
No, Dandy Dan, Bugsy Malone, and Lousy.
Okay. Do you want just to say something about them?
That's right. Well, Bugsy Malone, Rose and I think during our married life, we've probably only seen
About
5 films, something like that. And Bugsy Malone, I actually sat all the way through and watched all of it. I just think it's great singing. It's all youngsters based in the Prohibition in America. It's a joint American-US film, and I just think it's just a great film with youngsters acting their socks off. And Joe
It's alright, I can't get you in it when I'm standing behind you.
Jodie Foster, and who plays your role?
Oh, somebody Lou. Somebody Lou. I can't think of it. I can't think so. Okay.
Well, next time, Chris, if you've only been to the cinema 5 times in your married life, next time we will choose films featuring Jodie Foster and your hero Lou. So we have only one film left. There's one couple so far who haven't done anything. Someone like to guess what the film might be? Brief Encounter.
Ooh.
Stand up, the Bolters. I take it you are Celia Johnson and Trevor Howard.
Yes.
And how long, Mary, has yours and Steve's brief encounter actually lasted?
Almost 50 years.
So, well, that is and the story in the railway station, they meet, it's an illicit relationship, but they are both tempered with a great sort of sense of morality and not quite knowing what to do. Made in 1945, and at the very end, when they decide that they mustn't keep on meeting in the railway station, they want to say a tender farewell to each other, and coming and sitting down on the table with them is an absolute incessant chatterbox. And you see the clock ticking, and eventually the Trevor Howard character knows he has to catch the train, and he can't give his beloved Celia Johnson a final embrace. So,
Can I just interrupt one second?
Yes.
They don't actually get together sexually, do they?
No.
1940s, it's just
Yeah.
they were drawn to each other.
Yes.
To control one out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think it would happen nowadays. I think we've all moved on.
Yes. Mary, when did you first see the film?
It was on a black and white telly, I think. But yes, donkeys years ago.
Right, and you've obviously seen it with Steve together and everything.
Have we?
Right, I'll make that your next important mission, to see it together.
I think you might have slept through it.
You might have slept. Right. Well, you have performed perfectly and beautifully. I don't think we can wish you another 50 years, but here's to another 25 years. The top film out of the 100 best British films from the British Film Institute, and it was
The Third Man.
The Third Man, of which nobody came, and so just looking through the list, there's lots of films that we didn't explore, which brings us to the end. Sorry, you're doing a... Is this the theme tune? Right? Carry on, carry on.
Just keeps doing that,
Right, I think you've done that very well. So, on that happy note, we've gone through the seats and chairs have been reorganised from how they've ever been before. You've managed to bring a lovely, mild evening. It's sometimes perishingly cold in here. I think that it's just left for me to say that Jill and Chris and their team of helpers deserve a final round of applause for...